election could trigger a second wave of infections. But for now, South Korea is determined to prove what is possible during this pandemic.
Let's take it to South Korea now, where President Moon Jae-in's governing party has won an unprecedented landslide in parliamentary elections, which were the first to be held amid the pandemic. The ruling Democratic Party had highlighted the country's so far successful fight against COVID-19, which has brought the number of daily infections down from a peak of 900 a day in late February to under 30 new cases a day. Millions turned out to cast their ballots. You can see them there, everyone wearing masks, using hand sanitizers and wearing plastic gloves. Our correspondent Laura Bicker says it's been an historic 24 hours.
We have seen a number of political records come tumbling down here. It has been the highest turnout since 1992. People thought the coronavirus would keep voters away. It didn't. 66% of voters turned out despite the restrictions, having to wear a mask, stand a metre apart, use hand sanitizer, plastic gloves. They all managed it and went through. Of course, we may have to wait another 2 weeks to see if all was kept safe. However, when it comes to the political records here, it is the biggest majority for the ruling Democratic Party since 1987, and for any party since this country held democratic elections in 1987. So the records have come tumbling down. And as you said there, the Democratic Party put the government's handling of COVID-19, this aggressive tracing and testing measures, right at the heart of their campaign. And it appears for now to have worked.
Laura Bicker there.
Well, Laura joins us now live from Seoul. Laura, good to see you. I mean, as you say, quite a different sort of election. What sort of turnout was there?
A record turnout, the highest turnout in a parliamentary election since 1992. So we're hearing it's about 66.2% of the 44 million eligible voters turned out. Now, as well as the measures you saw there, if you had a temperature that was over 37.5 degrees Celsius, you were moved to a separate polling booth. So they set up a separate voting area for those with a higher temperature. Also, when it came to those in quarantine, there are around 60,000 people currently in quarantine. Perhaps they've come into contact with an infected patient, or they're here after returning from overseas. They too were allowed to vote, but only at a certain time, that last hour of polling. They were told to leave their homes at a certain time and be back. They had to call health authorities the minute that they returned home. These measures have taken an army of volunteers, 550,000 people around the country, to try to make sure that everything was in place. But so far, fingers crossed, everything seems to have gone quite smoothly.
Laura, there's been huge amount of praise for the way in which South Korea has handled this pandemic. Is this also now a test of how the public views President Moon?
Exactly. So these are parliamentary elections. It's 2 years before the next presidential election, but his ruling party is under scrutiny. And so far, and I have to put a big note of caution, we've had exit poll results. Sometimes these can be wrong, but so far it shows or suggests certainly that the ruling party could be on course for an historic win, one of the biggest wins that they've had. Obviously, the votes have still to be counted. And again, I just kind of urge caution with that. But it does seem that they have done rather well. And that may be because people feel that this pandemic has been brought under control. They've seen what's happened around the world. And when those case numbers were ramping up, at one point we were getting 900 cases a day. It's now down to under 20 a day. And I think as people have seen how it's been handled abroad and how it's all handled here, I think they're feeling certainly very thankful.
Laura, thanks so much for joining us and for that update.
Well, the pandemic is disrupting political calendars around the world, but South Korea is pressing ahead with parliamentary elections, despite the obvious risk of infection. Polling stations opened a few hours ago. Voting is very much underway. It's involved a lot of preparation to get the stations ready, but the government is trying to reassure its 44 million eligible voters it is safe to leave their homes. From Seoul, Laura Bicker reports.
This is an election like no other. Voters must wear masks, stand at least a metre apart. Their temperature is taken. They disinfect their hands and wear plastic gloves. Well, these 2 days of early voting have seen a record turnout despite the ongoing pandemic. People are still coming here in their thousands to cast their vote. They're going into these little booths here with their plastic gloves. They mark their ballot and then put it in the box.
I thought maybe the election should be postponed because people wouldn't turn up. But now that I'm here and see so many others, I am not worried.
I don't think we should be worried. This is about our right to vote.
Patients with coronavirus are also able to vote. Special polling booths have been set up outside treatment centres. This woman told us she was thankful for the opportunity. Campaigning during a pandemic requires some thought. Gone are the mass rallies, replaced by mostly masked encounters. Candidates whose main concern was once a slowing economy and stalled peace talks with North Korea have now had to show they're doing their bit to fight COVID-19. South Korea controlled the spiralling number of cases quickly and effectively, aggressively tracing and testing infected patients. The widely praised response has given President Moon's once embattled Democratic Party a boost. The opposition, however, credit the thousands of health professionals on the front lines. There are fears that holding an election could trigger a second wave of infections, but for now, South Korea is determined to prove what is possible during this pandemic. Laura Bicker, BBC News, Seoul. It has been an incredible year on the Korean peninsula. As the son of North Korean refugees, it seemed that the peninsula was on the brink of war. Is this more personal or political for you?